So I'm gonna move through these fairly rapidly. This is all based on your book, and I think I told you that your book is based on 2014 or 2015 or something tax schedules, and I see no point in teaching that when we've had major tax legislation since then. Our forms don't look alike, our laws don't look alike. So it's still helpful. Well, you have to read the book because it just reemphasizes a lot of these concepts. But on the slides, what I've done is taken their slides and then changed things and shown you where I changed them to update the book to current law. So I'm going to just jump ahead and start here in the interest of time. So basically, it's estimated that the average American family, whatever the heck that means, pays about 1/3 of their income in taxes, whether it's property tax, sales tax, income tax, what have you. Our goal is always tax minimization. We all want to, as much as is legally possible, minimize our tax burden, clearly. Lots of people pay no income tax at all. We talked about that. But you still have to pay what? Regardless of how much you make. Social Security, and by now you should be very easily able to quote this percentage. We've worked with that a lot. 6.2% of that is what? Social Security, and 1.45% of that is what? Medicare. Okay. We looked on Monday at the tax rates for a single taxpayer. And I want to make sure that everybody understood this. What kind of a tax system do we have? Progressive or regressive? Progressive. The higher your tax bracket, the more of every dollar of earnings you pay. So if I have taxable income of $190,000 a year and I'm single, do I pay 32% on everything I make? No. I am just like anybody. I pay 10% on the first 95-25, right? That is the whole identification of a progressive tax system. So as you get higher income, that next dollar of income is taxed at a higher rate. But the lower amounts are always stay at just what it says.
Is that with the, like a 32% over 32,000 plus the 32% over?
They have figured out this 32,090 is 10, 12, 22, and 24 on that first chunk of money. They've done the math for you. This is only for single. There's other kinds of ways to file your tax returns, right? So I'll get there in a sec. So we have a progressive tax rate system here. Okay, this is super important. There's a huge difference between your average tax rate and your marginal tax rate. When we were reading our pay stubs, what were we looking at? Average or marginal? Average. We were taking how much FIT did you pay in all year and dividing it by your gross earnings. That's average. Marginal, so just what it says, total tax divided by taxable income. Marginal tax rate is from that chart I just had up. What rate are you paying on your very last dollar of income, i.e. your highest dollar of income? So that comes right from that table, 10, 12, 22, 24, 31, 33, 35, or 37. So average, this is the takeaway from this. We use our average tax rate for planning in the long term. So things like I was telling you, like I'm going to take out $6,000 a month from my retirement. When I get old, I'm not going to use my marginal tax rate to figure out my tax bite. I'm going to use my average tax rate. But if I'm making a decision about a bonus or jumping tax brackets, then I have to use my marginal tax rate. So the question is, the question you ask yourself is the decision I'm trying to make based on my next chunk of income, or is it based on all of my income? And that's how you decide whether it's average or marginal. Here's your 5 filing statuses. I mean, and most of you are probably like that. So you're single, you're unmarried, or you're married filing jointly. So you have a partner. It can be, you can marry filing jointly if you're common law. You can marry filing jointly if you're same sex. That's relatively new. So you can file a joint return in that case. Married filing separately, you're married, but you're choosing to file separate tax returns. That is almost never beneficial. I think I've maybe done that twice in 25 years. Head of household is if you're single, but you provide more than half the support for a dependent living in your home. It doesn't have to be a kid. It could be a niece, could be your disabled brother, could be your grandma.
Does it have to be a family member?
No, it actually doesn't. Qualifying person, you can be supporting a friend. There's lots of rules, and it's rare, but I mean, like last year I actually did it for a couple. Yep.
So our cousins excluded.
I don't know. Whenever you see something like that, that's a result of some legislative compromise. And then surviving spouse is if you're a widow or widower and you have a dependent at home for 2 years after the year that your spouse died, you get beneficial tax rates, and that's called surviving spouse.
Head of household.
It is for single taxpayers. Yeah. Okay, we've done all this. We know how to read a paycheck. Big difference between gross pay and take-home pay, right? You got to pay Social Security, got to pay Medicare, got to pay income tax, might have insurance premiums, might have 401k contributions, might have union dues. Right now, a lot of people are looking at tax refunds. What do I do? And many of you did this, which was great, is you put your tax refund into your cash flow budget, which you should. I'm getting back $383. Or I'm a single mom with 2 kids and I have earned income credit. I'm getting back $4,500. Okay, and you see that all the time. Huge chunks of money for folks that are living paycheck to paycheck. And, unfortunately, kind of in our consumer society, it's like, oh, go shopping or something. I'm like, no. Do something. Usually folks in that case need to have an emergency fund because their, battery goes out on their car. They're like, oh, God, I can't get to work. Right? So you have to get your emergency fund funded, pay down credit cards, fund an IRA, join a gym, give to charity, do house repairs, particularly anything around, anything around that's going to result in a savings in your energy bills, and also it's just good stewardship, right? Okay, this is beyond our scope, but it's in the book. I'm just going to say a couple sentences on it. If you have stocks or bonds and you sell them, that's at a gain, that's called a capital gain. If those bonds and stocks pay dividends or interest, they may be qualified. And all of that stuff is taxed at lower rates than that tax rate schedule I put on. In fact, some of it's not taxed at all. So if you're like in the 10 or 12% bracket, so I've got a part-time job, I make 18 grand a year, I'm single, right? I'm in the 10% bracket, but my grandpa left me a stock portfolio and I sold some stocks. I pay 0% on those gains. How do you guys feel about that? This is a big, big issue. You don't feel about it?
Well, it just feels capitalism.
It's really a tricky thing because if I go to work every day as a waitress and you sell stocks and bonds, why am I paying tax on my earnings and you're not? See what I'm saying? The flip side of it is, if you're on the other end of the macroeconomic tax scale, is supposedly people that own stocks and bonds and have capital gains are the people that are going to invest in the economy, and it's going to trickle down and create jobs for everybody else.
So it's based off of your income, not your stock or bond value.
If you sell them.
Oh.
So, for example, let's see, up here. I think this is pretty important. So, here I am, I've got a W-2, and I make $30,000 a year, and I'm single. Figure out my taxes. That's all you need to know. You have to go to that tax formula that we worked on in the book, right? Page 91. The tax formula on page 91. I'm single, and my W-2 says 30,000 bucks. Give a look.
She did it.
How much is my tax bill? And then I'm going to contrast that with somebody that has capital gain. So this is what we work on. I'm going to take those notes down. So is the 30,000 the number that I take here? No. Did you guys all take notes on what I did on Monday? We don't have exemptions anymore. And we do have standard deduction. It's, how much is it if you're single? Standard deduction? 12,000. How much if you're married, filing joint? 24. And head of households, 18. Those were the only numbers I gave you. So you're looking at the tax formula. All the sum total of this gal's income is her W-2 for $30,000. There's no adjustments for gross income. We don't have exemptions anymore. So you should have crossed that out of your book. Everybody do that? No exemptions. Okay.
Is that part of the new tax system?
It is.
Capital gains?
No, it was just made more, it's been there since Reagan, since the early 80s, but it's become even more beneficial to high income people. Go figure. So do I pay tax on all this? No, what do I subtract?
Oh, no.
I'm trying to get to what? Remember that term? Taxable income. So I've got to subtract the larger of my standardized deduction or my itemized deductions. And we talked about itemized deductions, but in this case I didn't give you any, so you have to assume she's standard. The only time you use itemized is if it's larger than your standard, and I think that I said really the only people I ever see that itemize, they get higher than standard because they own a home, their mortgage interest numbers, which takes them into itemized. Right? So pretty straightforward, $18,000. I come here, I can see that she's in the 12%, is that average or marginal? Marginal. And it tells me that then her tax equals $953 plus 12% of the excess over 95.25. Right? So, anybody get the number?
8,475 is what you go.
8475. What's her average taxes? If her highest marginal bracket's 12%, what's her average tax? I don't think it is. I think we have to take the tax divided by the TI to get the average. The tax, all right, we know her highest marginal rate is 12%. So if she's got a tax bill of $84.75 on taxable income of $18,000, what's her average rate? What is it? I don't think so. 84%? Is that what you said? No.
I said 47.
Oh, 47%? We must have done, something's wrong here. Something's way wrong, sorry.
that's-
I didn't bring my,
The number I gave you was the number that she's over.
oh, God, yeah, I mean,
Total calculation.
okay.
You still got-
What's 84.75 times 12%?
I think it's 1,017.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Sorry. So her tax bill's $19.70. That makes a hell of a lot more sense. Huh, 10.9 is the average. Right? Average. Everybody get that? So if I asked you, what's her marginal tax bracket? You tell me 12%. What's her average tax? 10.9. So let's contrast that. Write this down now. Now I'm somebody that's got a W-2 of 20,000 and capital gains of 10. We've got the same amount of gross income, but it's different sourced.
10,000.
Yeah, it's the same. This time I've got a W-2 of 20 with capital gains of 10. So I still got $18,000 of taxable income, but 10 of it is capital gains. Yes, sir.
Is that a good way of looking at it, since capital gains, what you could have been making that money on could have taken, what, 10, 15 years to make? Like paying it.
Could have, or I could have just maybe bought a rental house and flipped it.
Right.
I
Okay.
mean, so what's her highest marginal tax bracket? We know the answer to that. 12%. So how much is she paying on her capital gains? 0. She's paying 0 on 10 of that $18,000 of taxable income.
So is that like an allocation where you file like separately if you're married or something like that?
No, without going into too much detail, that's not going to be very filing separately. That's not going to be beneficial.
So you still have to put it in your taxes even if it's 0% though?
Sure.
Yeah.
So figure out for me $18,000 of taxable income, 10 of that is capital gains. So therefore, how much do I take to the table? The other 8. $10,000 is basically taxed at 0. The other 8,000, I have to go to the table. So she's not paying any 1970, is she? She's paying 10,000 times 0%. And she's paying 8,000 is in the lowest marginal, right? 10%. So her tax bill What's her average tax rate now compared to the gal that went to work every day? $800 divided by 18,000. So, how much is that? 4%? 4.1?
4.4.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot my phone in my car and then my calculator's on there. So, you're not going to be responsible for all this. I'm trying to make a point. You are responsible for figuring tax, for sure, based on that tax formula. And you need to know the difference between an average tax rate and a marginal tax rate. But my point I'm trying to get you to think about here is the first lady goes to work every day and makes $30,000 and pays average taxes of 10.9 versus the other person works part-time and cashes in some stocks and pays 4.4. You just have a think about that is all I'm saying.
So if you have capital gains, you just get a big tax break.
Yes, because look at this. The higher you get, I mean, if you're in the 37% marginal bracket, you're making 500 grand or more a year. But you're not paying 37% on your capital gains, on selling your investment property and your land and your stocks and your bonds and your jewelry and your gold, you're paying 20%. Remember when Kerry was running for president and they did that? Not Kerry, who ran against him? Romney was running for president and his income, taxable income he released his tax returns was $50 million for 1 year of taxable income, and he paid less tax than his secretary. It's because of this. Because when you have, I'm beating a dead horse, but anyways, it's the whole reason that there's a lot of controversy around it.
Isn't there to incentivize like investment?
That's why I said the macro argument for this is these are the people that are job creators. They start factories, they buy equipment, they invest in infrastructure. It's called trickle down. And Ronald Reagan.
He rightly exploited it.
Huh?
I think he rightly exploited it.
It depends upon how you view macroeconomic theory. Are you liberally oriented or conservatively oriented? And who do you believe that it benefits? Does it help wealthy people keep more of their wealth, or is it benevolently spread around and used to elevate lots of
Do you think it
people?
helps the economy?
I think I would prefer to share facts with you and let you critically analyze it on your own. I haven't personally seen trickle-down work, and we do know factually that the saturation of wealth is increasing and the trajectory is pretty steep. There's people so much smarter than I could ever dream of being that can show you charts and graphs that prove the opposite. So, you know, I mean, I think in my life it's more like anecdotally I haven't seen it working, but that's not to say that there's not concrete examples where it has.
Well, isn't this because folks are saving more than they should be investing? Like the folks who are responsible for the trickle-down effect, that they're having to keep some of the monies for the greater inequality, and then they are putting more into savings rather than investing in stocks.
Well, and it's not just savings, they're offshoring it, they're taking it out of America completely. They don't want to pay tax on it. If I've got a couple $1 billion in wealth, I am not interested in paying American tax rates on that. So I've got my money holed up in the Caymans or Switzerland or now Ireland or the Bermudas. So that's not really trickling anywhere. Anyways, that's beyond our scope. Okay.
So also, when you think about like the lower tax rate on investments and stuff like that, encourages just investments in like the stock market and stuff like that, where most people base the economy, how the economy is doing on the stock market, and they go like that. So
Right.
like, show that we're doing well.
That's a really interesting anomaly, isn't it? So the question is, I think your question is how, well, we just heard this, if you listen to any State of the Union, which I have to say honestly I didn't, but I've gotten a lot of blurbs from it today. How do you assess how well the economy is doing? Do you look at your portfolio, how well your stock portfolio is doing? And if that's what you believe is the basis for strong economic growth, then this makes tons of sense. So, and I'm not asking anybody to raise hands, but in general, my experience, I work with some low-income groups on a volunteer capacity. I've taught at this school for 25 years. My experience is that there's lots and lots and lots of working class people that not only don't have, but probably never will have a portfolio. So assessing economic well-being on that leaves out a shit ton of people.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, but even like the people that aren't part of it, I still sometimes feel like they base how the economy is doing on the stock market, and it gives them more of a sense of security if it's doing well.
Which is ludicrous. I totally concur with that statement.
Could you explain a little more?
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
You're doing a good job.
it's just like most people seem to base how the economy is doing on the stock market, how the stock market is doing. So even people that don't have any money in the stock market, if it's doing well, they still have more of a sense of security in the economy and like in whatever job they have or whatever, just based on if the stock market is doing well. And having the lower tax rate on the stock market would encourage more people to put more money into the stock market, making it better, making everybody.
I work at a meat packaging plant in Des Moines, Iowa. I make $26,000 a year. I support my family of 4 on that. Okay? I don't have any money in the market. I'm never going to have any money in the market. I'm just trying to get by. But when you come and put a microphone in my face and say, how do you think the economy is doing, Lisa? Right? How do you feel? You know, it's this consumer assessment, or what's it called? Consumer satisfaction or consumer prognosis. How do you feel, Lisa, about the economy? I feel great because when I turn on, use your imagination, my cable channel of choice at night, I hear about how great the economy's doing because the stock market's doing. I don't know anything about the market. I'm never going to anything in the market. I'm never going to be anything more than a meat packer.
Are there statistics on how many people contribute to the market annually?
I'm sure there are. And I can't tell you that number holistically, but we know that about 40% of Americans have formal retirement funds, like an IRA or a 401k. I would say for the vast amount of middle class people I know, that's their only point of entry into the stock market. In other words, that's all the money I have is in my 401k. Most people don't also have, a couple $100,000 sitting in an account they play with. Middle class folks. Does that make sense? Okay, so for Monday, first off I need to just jot down your homework scores before you leave. Secondly, you need to do out of chapter 3, so you need to read chapter 3, numbers 1, 2, and 4. But you're using the tax schedule here on the PowerPoint. You're not using the tax rates in your book. We're using 2018 numbers. So it's asking you to calculate taxable income and calculate tax. So you're going to use that, what page is that on there?
91.
Yeah, you're going to use that tax formula on page 91 that I gave you, where we learned about this new standard deductions, the amounts, right? And that there's no exemptions anymore. And you're going to figure out taxable income, and then you're going to figure out taxes.
What pages were we supposed to read?
So the chapter 3, read all of chapter 3, but we went through on Monday on page 91. We looked for quite a long time at that tax formula, right? And I told you that the standard deductions are not the ones that are in your book. They're $12,000 if you're single, and $24,000 if you're married, filing joint.
12 and 24?
12 and 24. And that we don't have exemptions anymore. That's a whole block on that page on 91. It talks about personal exemptions, and that's all gone. We don't have that. And then lastly, you're going to use the tax rates that I put up on the PowerPoint slides, not the ones in the book. So numbers 1, 2, and 4. And then really on Monday, we need to bust out 2 tax returns. I've given you the data for Indigo Smith. Everybody should have the tax return. That's a packet I just gave you.
But yeah, I was gonna say there used to be like yesterday there was a different one that was posted on Google that I did. Or was that?
Oh, that's good for practice, but I took that down, I updated it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Ooh. So what I'd also like you to do for Monday, other than number 1, 2, and 4, is I would like you to try and do Indigo Smith's tax return. You've got, I think, 1 W-2, and then did I give you student loan interest for? Yeah. That's it. Pretty straightforward. So I'm not going to grade it, and I'm not going to give you points for it. I just want you to try it. We'll work through it together on Monday, and then I've got another packet to give you on Monday, and we'll work through that together. And then you should look at the review. Yes.
On Saturday in Gallagher Business Building, I saw online that you could go have your tax returns prepared for free.
Yeah.
Do you know about that?
I do. It's called VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance.
Do you recommend it?
It's bona fide, sure. Yep. They'll be.
Could they like help me with
Sure.
this?
They can't help you with that.
Isn't it the same thing?
It's an assignment.
Okay.
Really.
They can help me with mine to like show.
Of
walk me
course.
through the
Oh yeah,
process.
yeah. They will do that.
Okay.
Yeah, you are absolutely not allowed to take your
No,
homework
I
to
won't.
that.
I won't. I'm doing the same thing. So.
Okay. All right. So let me just come around quickly and jot down your scores. And